Welcome to Hypnosis Health Info. I'm Roger Moore. You know, I've talked on several occasions before about sodium and the importance of reducing the amount of salt that we take in. And I was again looking online and seeing what's out there and going on in the health news, and came across another WebMD report that was dated yesterday, June 24th of 2010, that had some interesting information, some data that surprised me. It's 90% in U.S. get too much salt, and they blame 5 foods. 5 high sodium foods, not all of them salty tasting, are a big reason why 9 in 10 Americans get way too much sodium every day. New Center for Disease Control data show that only 9.6% of U.S. adults limit their daily sodium intake to recommended levels. That's only 9.6%. So where's all that sodium coming from? Well, mostly from salt. But only 10% of it comes from our shakers. An estimated 77% comes from sodium in processed or restaurant foods. All food categories contribute to sodium intake, but grains, and that surprised me when I read that, and meat, the foods we eat most, contribute to the most sodium. But the CDC report identifies 5 foods that give Americans most of their salt. Yeast breads, chicken and mixed chicken dinners, pizza, pasta dishes, and cold cuts. Now I'm surprised at the pasta dishes. They must be talking restaurant meals again, and processed pasta dishes, because I make some pretty fantastic pasta using like a whole grain pasta, and cook down my tomatoes and add fresh ingredients, and I never add salt. I spice it up good, and it's very flavorful and people love it, but I sure don't salt it. The 3 food groups from which we get the most sodium include some surprises. Grains, and I was shocked when I read that. I went, what? But here's the deal. It says grains contribute 37% of our daily sodium. These foods include grain-based frozen meals and soups, breads, and pizza, which is mostly salty bread. So when they talk about grains, they're not talking about quinoa and farro and brown rice and good healthy grains. They're talking again about processed foods and soups. And I think I've mentioned before about processed soups, and that a year or so ago I had the opportunity to go home for lunch, and there was a can of supposedly a healthy split pea soup there, and I decided to have that for lunch, and it said it had 2 servings, but when I cooked it and poured it into a mug, I drank it all and called it lunch. But I noticed later throughout the day that I was just really thirsty and was drinking more and more water, and I could feel my fingers swell, my rings got tight, my watch got tight. The next morning I was up 3 pounds, pure water weight. A little stiff, a little achy. The following day it was all gone again, but that was just from a can of soup. And then it also says meats, including poultry and fish, contribute 28% of our daily sodium. And here's the other one that surprised me. Vegetables contribute more than 12% of our daily sodium. This seems surprising, but potato chips and French fries are vegetables. So they're not talking about zucchini you pick out of the garden or lettuce. They're talking about processed foods, potato chips, French fries. And then canned vegetables, vegetable soups, vegetable sauces tend to be loaded with salt. Basic U.S. dietary guidelines suggest that adults get less than 2,300 milligrams of salt each day, but the basic guidelines apply to fewer than 1/3 of Americans. The rest, 70% of the population, are middle-aged, elderly, or African American. This huge majority should get less than 1,500 milligrams of salt per day. But the average American gets more than twice the recommended daily dose of sodium, 3,466 milligrams of sodium per day. This means we're at risk of dangerously raising our blood pressure. High blood pressure increases our risk of heart disease, stroke, and kidney disease. The CDC calculates that if everyone followed the sodium guidelines, there would be as many as 120,000 fewer cases of heart disease and up to 66,000 fewer strokes each year. So what can we do? Well, a lot's up to the food industry. There is a lot we can do ourselves. First one is eat processed foods. Or excuse me, eat less processed foods. And you know, I'm always talking about voting with your wallet. Stop buying processed foods and any packaged food that's filled with sodium and filled with fat. Stop buying them. Eat more fresh and frozen vegetables. Compare labels and choose low sodium foods, and don't be fooled by deceptive labels. And when using canned vegetables or beans, rinse the food well with water to remove as much salt as possible. Anytime that I use canned beans, and yes, I'll admit I do use canned beans, open the can, put it in the strain, put the beans in the strainer, and I wash and wash and wash and just rinse them as much as I possibly can to get the sodium off of them, and then cook them that way. Now I know that salt cravings and the craving of salty, crunchy foods can be a major challenge for many people. It certainly was for me back when I weighed 110 pounds more than I do now. I do things like pour salt in my hand and lick my hand, or I order a margarita and lick the salt off the rim and maybe only have a sip, if any, of the margarita itself. But what changed for me was learning hypnosis. And it really became quite easy using hypnosis to change my desires, to change my likes and dislikes for food. And I discovered that when I made fresh food, when I focused on the vegetables, the whole grains, the fruits, that I could season and spice my foods with other seasonings and not use salt, and that I could create meals that were very tasty, very flavorful, that had lots of life and texture and sensuality to them, and were very enjoyable and also healthy. So if you'd like to know more about hypnosis, look around here at Hypnosis Health Info at the various tools and resources. And if you live here in Puget Sound, you can come visit me here on Bainbridge Island, my office here, or over in Seattle in the Medical Dental Building. And of course, once a month I'm over in Forks. And if you live too far away, then give me a call, send me an email, and together you and I will create a program that will support you in your health and wellness goals. So if you're consuming lots of salt or eating lots of processed foods, high salt foods, I really urge you to rethink that and take a look at what your priorities are in life and just what is all that sodium doing to your health. I'm Roger Moore, and this is Hypnosis Health Info.